Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my page 112 tag for November 2023. The page 112 tag was brought to BookTube by Sean at Sean the Bookmaniac. It's based off of a French literary prize wherein they comprised the long list of said prize by judging solely page 112 of the novels in contention. Page 112 in most length novels is supposed to be about midway through, past all of the polished for editors pages, where you get to the nitty-gritty writing. Also, you have no context for the rest of the story if you only read page 112, so you can only judge based on the quality of the writing. So I have been using this tag since the beginning of COVID to slowly whittle my physical TBR shelves before building them back up again. I take 3 pieces of paper out of this handy dandy books and cat mug every month, and then I grab them from my shelves, read page 112 with you, and then add 1 book to my month's TBR. Or at least that's how I play most months. Every 4th month, I go ahead and change things up a bit. I take the runners-up from the last 3 months and pit them against each other and then pick one from them. This is a way for me to do less post-production work every 4th month, which is especially nice in November because I am currently also taking part in NaNoWriMo, which is to write 50,000 words in 1 month, so I'm a little pressed for time. So any pre-made clips that I can just insert in here is fine with me. So yeah, that is what we are up to today, and without any further ado, let's go back in time. It kind of starts in a weird way because there's a really long sentence that begins on this page, page 111, and goes to page 112. We'll have to go with it, and this is about the middle of the story Bird Song from the Radio. This went on for 5 months until the day after Madeline's 21st birthday, when she woke up in the middle of the day still drunk from the first legal cocktails of her life, start of February, drove to the school, got the children into the car, and found the car was too hot, and as she tried to wrench her wool coat off one shoulder, and as she felt the last of the Black Russian's muscle through her veins, and as she hit a patch of black ice, she understood there would be an accident. She could see the children hurt in the back seat, the windshield gone lacy, herself opening the door and running away, away, away. When the car stops, I'm going to leg it. And that was the last thought Madeline, or any of them, had. And then there's a break. No children, thought Leonora. She had intended to get herself upright and go looking for them. She should have eaten them when she could. For a while she tried to distract herself with the radios. Each wore poor Alan's family name, like a crest on the pellicle of the speaker. She went from room to room and turned them on, but then she thought she could hear, behind the sonorous day-long monologue of the news station, or the awful brightness of Vivaldi on the classical station, or jokes cracked by a disc jockey named after an ancient king, the voices of her children. She tried to tune them in. You had to use the volume and the tuning knob in mincing little oscillations. Then there it was, the tootling rhythm of Dolly's conversation, Rosa humming in the back of her throat as though ready to defiantly swallow the sound should someone walk into the room. Marco sighing before he explained something. She wondered whether they each had a station, Dolly, Marco, Rosa. Maybe they had different radios even. No, they would be cuddled up together in one frequency, the way they liked. Okay, so this is definitely a very in media res situation. Like we start with a reference to something in Madeline's life that we don't have really a lot of context for, as per starting in the middle of the story, but we do know that she is 21, she's drunk, perhaps, you know, living it up because of that special birthday, and then it's a shocking beginning to this page. Something awful happened. She's in a car with children, not sure if they're her own or if they're someone else's, and there's a horrible accident, and it seems like they all die. Of course, this colors my assumptions about the next part, which, you know, maybe I'd know differently, of course, if I read the story from the beginning, but I assume that Leonora is connected to these people. Like, the easy assumption to make is that the three children she references are the three who died in the car accident. And it's certainly easy to presume that too, because this is a short story, so there's not a lot of room for a lot of deviations and subplots. And that line about eating them is a little weird, because I don't think of Elizabeth McCracken as a surrealist short story writer, so I'm not sure where that came from. But the talking about them as if they were radio frequencies. I mean, presuming these are the same children who died in the last section, it's just a beautiful way, I think, to deal with grief, and a reminder of the strength of Elizabeth McCracken's writing. And I am a short story aficionado, and I've enjoyed other of McCracken's short stories. The old man straightened up painfully and said, "I'll let you rest." Coming over to the desk, he asked, "Have you a new junior, Nurse Power?" "Just a skivvy," said Bridie before I could answer. "A replacement like yourself." The priest looked back at me and jerked his head at her. "I see she's a quick one." I said, "Don't I know it, Father?" He sneezed and wiped his great reddened nose. "Excuse me, ladies." I asked, "Have you a cold brewing?" "I'm just getting over a little dose of this flu." "If I may, Father." I put the back of my hand to his forehead, which was warmish. "Shouldn't you be in bed, then, to be on the safe side?" I'd rather walk it off," said Father Xavier. "I might as well be useful on the fever wards." "But the strain concerning your—" He raised his tufted eyebrows. "Considering my age, young lady, how much would it matter in the greater scheme of things if I were taken this very night?" Bridie let out a snort. Father Xavier winked at her. "I'll be grand. I hear the old are getting through this better than the young." I qualified that, "well, as a general rule." The priest said briskly, "His ways are mysterious." Delia Garrett's eyes were open now, her gaze following the old man out the door. She looked hollowed out. I couldn't bear to see her this way. "Hot whiskey, Mrs. Garrett?" As soon as I handed her the cup, she drained it, then lay back down on her pillows and closed her eyes. Okay, so this one also opens in the middle of a conversation, and in a way, it's a little, in the beginning, even more, confusing to me than the one in the sci-fi book. So, that one actually was more straightforward. I think I was confused about who the new person was the father was meeting. Was it Bridie or the narrator? And at first, I figured that the narrator was the new person because he was looking at Bridie, but now I'm thinking it was Bridie sort of like, jumping into the conversation to introduce herself. So it's just a little confusing without context. But after we get past that hiccup, the narrative moves really quickly. Like, I feel like, there's very limited, external posturing about, like, setting the scene about, what the characters are reacting to physically, or what the physical environs are. But it's okay because I feel like the dialogue is just so rigorous and riveting. Like, I'm just right there in the scene. Maybe it's just my U.S. Thoughts sometimes, like, because this dialogue feels very British to me, so I almost feel like, oh, it's like I'm in a different culture, and that's kind of cool on its own. Although I'm very concerned for this elderly father, I suppose, who seems to be deciding to be on the fever wards with a fever. Actually, I feel like, it's not good for him. I'm not sure it's that good for the patients either. But yeah, I think one of the only other things I dislike about this is that there's no quotation marks. I just, that's such a pet peeve of mine that apparently Emma Donoghue does as well. I've never read any of her other works, so I guess I'll have to keep it in mind if I read anything else from hers. I do find this very intriguing. The day before yesterday, I was swimming in the Mediterranean off of Port Bow with Golo Man, entirely in the nude, while the others had their siesta. Fine young man, Golo. Under different circumstances, you might have been jealous. And you, too, I trust, are also well. Your students love you, and your friends keep you busy. Your bed must be full of boyfriends by now, and I can't blame you, as long as you kick them out before I get back. Have you perhaps by now settled upon one of the houses you described in your earlier letter? Whichever it is, I promise I'll love it. I'll get home to you and to it as soon as I can. For now, dear E, imagine how grateful I am to have a wife who understands the necessity and urgency of my work here, as I sincerely hope you still do. With love, as ever, your V. He blotted the letter and capped the pen. Grant, reading over his shoulder, made a noise of quiet bemusement. I hardly merit a mention, he said. Varian turned in his chair. I wrote your name twice, didn't I? Perhaps I'm not as fine a man as young Golo. Grant sat before him on the bed. They had agreed to meet for a drink on Varian's balcony, while Katznelson visited a colleague at the university. Grant and Lisbon. From some secret linguistic reserve, he'd produced a knowledge of Portuguese that had allowed him to shop for a sky-blue cravat in the manner of the local dandies. In his pocket, a silver cigarette case filled with a set of Cuban cigarillos, and a diminutive silver cutter. What could Varian have written to Eileen about Elliot Grant, the apparition who refused to disappear? Varian had nothing to hide, as regarded his own behavior. Not that he and Eileen were in the habit of hiding anything. Eileen detested ignorance above all else, and most of all her own ignorance in personal affairs. When they'd agreed early on that a cosmopolitan marriage allowed for an occasional adventure on the side, they'd also agreed to be perfectly honest. It was no secret to Eileen that he'd had liaisons with men. She tolerated them as a peculiarity of his character. But how was he to be honest with her about Grant, when Grant's presence was still a matter of consternation and confusion? Okay, well, I'll just start to say it's kind of interesting to compare this one to the last book, which was about YA romance troubles. Maybe it would be easier if, the protagonist of that story could just, have both boys, It would make it much easier if she were in a cosmopolitan relationship with her lovers. I mean, not that I really know enough about the context of that story. And anyway, to get back to this one. I'd forgotten a lot of the details other than Holocaust, but Varian Grant was an American rescuer who went abroad to Europe to try to rescue artists and such from, persecution. And I remember I read about his complicated past, maybe in an essay by Dara Horn in People Love Dead Jews, which maybe I should read again before reading this book. But yeah, as far as this is at all about his rescue missions, maybe the very end of his letter to his wife maybe alluded to it. But other than that, he mostly seems to be on some, striking romantic vacation where he can't seem to shake this guy Grant, I suppose. I mean, even I guess if you're going to have dalliances with men, maybe there's still parameters that could be crossed. Like, it kind of seems like from this exposition that he wants to be a little more casual with these relationships, and Grant might be sticking around and be a little more important than all that. And what's going to happen then when he returns home to Eileen, who he's expecting will kick all her lovers out of bed? So presumably he should do the same. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting how, having the letter and having his lover read over his shoulder gives this opportunity for a lot of exposition where we can explain what the marriage is like and all of that. And it's definitely, I don't know, I guess I'm getting the feeling that it's going to be a really chock-full book. It's a very chunky book. I know from, the cover copy, it's going to be about some of his rescue missions, which don't, appear at all in this page. So it gives off the impression it's going to be a lot more hyper-specific about his personal life as well. Clickety-clack, 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 clickety-clack. I thought this should bring us back to the present, since that's what I should be doing for Nano. Oh, I feel the pressure already. But anyway, let's recap what you just saw. My August pick is The Souvenir Museum, stories by Elizabeth McCracken. My September pick is The Pool of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. And finally, my October pick is The Flight Portfolio by Julie Oringer. So, out of the three of these, I think I'm going to officially eliminate The Pool of the Stars first, because you got to start somewhere, and there was some confusing name attribution in the beginning of this, so I feel like these are both all very strong books, so that's what I'm going for to, start whittling it down. So now I'm officially choosing between The Flight Portfolio and The Souvenir Museum, And in non-nano ways, I shouldn't be looking at the page length to determine which one I want to let go of, because that's technically not the point of this tag, but let's be real, there's other considerations to take into account, especially during crazy months with crazy goals in them. I could also say that, the flight portfolio, it's just going to, be incredibly dense and a really difficult subject matter having to do with the Holocaust, although I feel like actually the length would, help in that case, because obviously from this page there might be some levity in it as we follow Varian Fry around. And meanwhile, if I'm trying to get away from, dense, depressing subjects, on this page, things get very dense and depressing with the loss of these children. But I can't also deny how compelled I was by the emotionality of this page. It's interesting to juxtapose these because I feel like the strength in this one was about physical description and about the dialogue between characters, and the strength in this one is about interiority and emotional truths of characters. And so I am going to go ahead with The Souvenir Museum by Elizabeth McCracken and try some short stories, which is a different milieu than, the National Novel Writing Month. If you're trying to write a novel, it's a very different sort of animal. But as a short story writer, I'm very keen to, read and hopefully learn from McCracken, continue to learn from her and the strength of her sentences and her interiority and her characters and all of that. Yes, hopefully it'll also be easy to get through this month as well, because maybe you can pick up and put down short stories and the length is less intimidating. So that's all I got for you right now, or most of what I got for you. I will leave the Goodreads links for all 3 of these books listed down below. The other big thing I like to do in these outros for the page 112 tag is highlight another booktuber who plays a TBR game or takes part in a readathon. I like to think of this tag as my way to take part in that community, and I love shouting out other people. So this month I'm going to shout out Lauren at Paperback Empire, who plays the TBR Star Jar game. She has pieces of colorful paper made into origami stars that she puts into 3 different jars. One of them is for sequels she wants to read. One of them with gold foiled stars is like her most anticipated reads. And then there's a catch-all jar for the rest, I think. And she takes out a few per month. And it's actually a pretty quick video she does, which also feels apropos for my NaNoWriMo, rapid fire, trying to squeeze things in this month. So anyway, I will link to her playlist down below. And in the meantime, the next time you should see me on this channel should be probably Monday morning as I post my first official NaNoWriMo vlog, which will not only be about my writing journey, I'll also be recapping some of the reading I'm doing throughout the month and taking you around to different places. Hopefully it'll be fun. And after that, I should do my author's answer video sometime later in that week, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I hope you are all having a great start to November with your reading, writing, or other exploits. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.